Yes. So just as we said in the previous conversation, we said that the overheads, the accounting of overheads follow three processes. There is the first one that we call overhead allocation. This is the overhead cost allocation. By overhead costs, we said these are just the indirect costs. Okay, the overhead costs, they always refer to the indirect cost. So what happens is that these indirect costs, they are given to specific cost centers, and the giving of these or distribution of these costs to the cost centers is what is known as allocation of these overheads. Now, after the overheads have been allocated to these centers, they have to be apportioned to specific, departments or specific units. This is called overhead apportionment. And we did say that as you are apportioning these overheads, I'll give you the practical example so that you understand properly. Now, get this properly. As you are apportioning these overheads to these different centers, you need to ensure that all the overheads that go to the service centers or those departments that are not manufacturing departments or production departments, those costs they need to be gotten from there and have them come to the what? To the manufacturing departments or to the production departments. The process of doing that is what is known as the overhead reapportionment. This is just a re-echo of the previous conversation. So I am trying to say that, for example, imagine you are receiving a rent. I was giving you an example of a university. I gave you an example of the University of Zambia. Assuming that the University of Zambia were renting, so now they receive this total rent from the landlord, and let's say they are required to pay 100,000, okay, of rent. Yeah, this is an indirect cost. We cannot attribute it to a specific product or a specific service that this company or this university is producing. So when this rent comes, it needs to be, shared, because let's say the UNZA management says, since we have different schools within the university that occupy different area spaces, this rent is for the entire area that we are occupying or for the land. We have different schools. We have got, for example, the School of Education. We have the School of the Graduate School of Business, GSP. We also have got the School of Veterinary Medicine. We have the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. We have the School of Mines, School of Engineering, among other schools. We also have canteens, okay, or the cafeterias, okay. So now what is happening is that if the university says, no, we need to allocate this cost, we need to share this 100,000 amongst these schools, okay? Because these same schools and these departments, they have some specific area that they are occupying. So now listen carefully. What will happen is that this rent will be shared. This 100,000 will be shared amongst these departments. Now, how do we share? Pay attention now. This is the thrust of today's conversation. How do you share? Okay, how do you get to share this? This 100,000. What basis do you use to share? Okay, with these other departments. All right. So the basis that you are using, it is called the basis of apportionment. Did you get that one? So the basis that you're going to use, are you going to use the floor area space that is occupied by these schools? Are you going to use the number of people who are employed in these departments? What really are you going to use? Are you going to use the number of bulbs that are there in the departments? Like what basis, so that at least this 100,000 is correctly shared. So those bases of apportionments are the ones that we are talking about in this conversation. Is that clear? Okay. Are you able to hear me, and can you see the screen? Right. So the following are some of the common bases used for primary distribution overhead in the manufacturing concern. Now, let's pay attention to these. These are the bases of apportionments that are there presented before you, and you need to pay attention to them. So we have, on the left side, the first column, we have the items of production overhead. This is an overhead. Then on the other side, we have the basis of distribution or the basis of apportionment. So let's start with number one. The depreciation of a plant, the depreciation of a factory, the depreciation of a machinery. Please, it is allocated by the value, the capital value of the what? Of the asset, or the net book value. You get the point. The book value of the asset. All right. If you don't have the book value, you can sometimes have it written as the cost, okay, of that particular asset. So these are non-current assets. Okay. If you look at the plant, then you have to when you're given those bases, you have to check if you are to allocate the cost about maybe depreciation of a plant, and among the basis of apportionment, you have the costs of the plant. Please use that one, or maybe you are given something like the book value of the plant, or the book value of this maybe machinery, the book value of the factory, the book value of a non-current asset, okay, shall be used as a basis of apportionment for the depreciation of that particular property, plant, and equipment, or non-current asset. Is that clear? So this is the basis that shall use always. You use the value of that asset. So use that as the basis of allocating these the depreciation, which is an overhead cost. Okay. Apart from that, you also have the other overhead, that is the repairs to machinery. Now, how can we do that? You are repairing what? Machinery. If you are given the cost for machinery, why not using the cost for the machinery as well? Similarly, the insurance of plant and machinery, the insurance of factories, okay, the factory. Please, you use the what? The capital value of the what? Of the asset. Okay, insurance of the plant, insurance of the machinery. As long as you are insuring the non-current asset and then you are given the value of that asset, please use the book value of that particular asset. How do you now, allocate the overheads relating to the rent, the rates, and the taxes of factory premises? How do you apportion these overheads, the rent, the rates, the taxes of factory premises? You use the floor area space, okay? You have to use the floor area space. If you're given the floor area space, please use the floor area space. That would really help to you. Now, what if you are locating power, motive power or electricity? Okay, if you are locating power, you are locating electricity, you can use what? Kilowatt. Okay, you can use kilowatts, or you can use horsepower for the horsepower of a machine. So you can use the kilowatt in case you are given the kilowatts. So use the kilowatts that have been provided to you. That is very important, and you need that. Okay. What if you are allocating insurance of stock? Okay, this is all these on the left side are overheads. How do you, what's the basis of apportionment? That's the conversation we are having. Okay, so let's say you are allocating what? Insurance of stock. How can you allocate or how can you apportion this overhead? You are insuring the inventory. So if you are given the average value of the inventory, it's better you use the average value of the inventory as the what? As the basis of apportionment. What about insurance and rent of factory building? This is very important now. What if you are you are insuring and you are paying rent for the factory building? Then here you can use the floor area space. Okay, you can use the floor area space. Now, this is where you have to pay attention because always we have confusions about these. The other ones. These are most of these costs are incurred in the service centers. Listen, the canteen, the canteen costs, overheads, of course, the canteen expenses, the welfare expenses of employees, the ESI contribution, the payroll expenses, the fringe benefits to the workers, the supervision charges, among others. Those costs, like such overheads, you can use the number of what? Workers or the number of employees. Okay? You can use the number of employees. For direct wages as well, you can use direct wages, of course, if, for example, you're paying salaries of those people who are directly involved in the work. Then you can use direct wages. But the number of workers is most appropriate, for example, for canteen services, yeah? Because the canteens are there to serve everyone, okay, in the business. Either this person is belonging to this department or not, they'll have to consider them and serve them. That is very important. So I have emphasized that the basis of apportionment for that is the number of employees. So be on a lookout of these whenever you're given the question. This conversation will help you even as you go through the assignment on the basis of apportionment. And again, what if you are having the audit fees? Those are overheads. Those you can use the sales as the basis of apportionment. If you have indirect materials, and if you have indirect materials, then you have the cost for direct materials. Then you can still use the cost for the indirect materials. Indirect wages, you can use direct wages just to help in the allocation process, because we are just trying to look for the most appropriate basis of apportionment, the one that is a bit closer, that is very close to the cost that we are considering. Now, the other various bases for the distribution of the services would include the following. For example, the repairs and maintenance. Those are service departments, yeah? The repairs department, the maintenance department. Usually for this one, you can use the hours worked, okay? We can use the hours that have been worked in the maintenance department. Could be machinery hours, if you're using machines, or labor hours at all, if the work is involving much of labor. The canteen, these are service department. I've already said you use the number of workers as a basis of apportionment. For the stores, you can use the value of the stores issued. and that is what happens. Then for the powerhouse, you can use the heat area or the cubic content. By this, you mean the volume, okay? You can use the volume. Then I should be quick to add for this that for heating you can also use the volume, because we always assume that when you are heating liquid, and liquid is usually measured in volumes. That's very important. Okay. If you are lighting, the overhead is about lighting, lighting, then you're given maybe the number of bulbs somewhere. You could use the number of bulbs because we are lighting. I mean, we are lighting the area. So all those are some of the common basis of apportionment that one may use as their. So I've emphasized that they are not used interchangeably. Instead, you look for the most appropriate, the one that speaks to the question. Is the one that is actually selected every time you are doing that. Okay. Let me give you some of the common items, for example. Have you seen an example here? There is an example here for the allocation of, these overheads. These are items. These are overheads items. For example, you've seen the direct wages. These have been direct allocated, but for rent, we have used the floor area space. Yeah. Power, you can use the whatever you have been provided. If you have been given the kilowatts, you can use those. House power units, you can use the same. Then depreciation, you use the cost of the machine, okay? Because maybe we are depreciating the machine here. So if you're depreciating that, you can use the cost of that. Indirect wages, we use direct wages to use that. The canteen, I told you that for canteen, you use the number of the number of hours to do the allocation, the apportionment. Then for electricity here, they also use the lighting points as well. This could be the most appropriate in the context of the question. I've emphasized that there is no fixed way of handling this one. You have to look for the most appropriate basis. That's the message is about the most appropriate. There is another example here on the basis of apportionment. I think on the left you can see the first column. You can see the overheads that we are allocating. Before I continue talking, let me just get confirmation if you are able to hear me. Are you able to hear me? Vivian, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's a good thing that you're not lost. At least you're able to connect. Especially, I'm just doing the class that you asked me to do last time. You told me to talk about the basis of apportionments as just a class on its own. So this is what I'm doing. Yeah, as per request. So now we have depreciation here. Depreciation, obviously, I've told you that I've emphasized for depreciation, you use the value of the asset that you're depreciating. Even for insurance, you can use the value of the asset that you're insuring. Then for canteen service, I think this cannot be overemphasized. I've said you use the number of workers. The rent rates and taxes, I've said these you use the floor area space, and the power, for the power, you can even use the HP of machines or whatever basis that is very close to power that you have been provided. Yeah, for electricity, you could still use the lighting points if at all you are given those. So you just check the basis will be given, okay? Look for the basis that is very close to the overhead. Yeah, because we are choosing the most appropriate. Okay. So basically, you will understand that the whole process of doing this is very easy. It's not even, challenging in any way. As long as you just know how best to do what, to do the allocation of the, to do the allocation of those costs that you have been provided with. Okay. Now we have this simple, work to try. We need to try the simple work. It's just some very simple work. What we want to do now, we're given the overheads. These are overheads that we have here. And from these overheads that we have on top, we are given an additional information. So the additional information is that the additional information, this one, is for the basis of apportionment. We want to ask ourselves, like, how can we allocate these, overheads that are on top? And what common basis do you think we can use to allocate these? Let us start. You are able to see the the basis of apportionment. Let us start from rent and rates. What do you think would be the best basis of apportionment? Here they are. These are the bases down here. For rent and rates.
Floor area.
Anyone? Thank you. So you can use the floor area. So this cannot be overemphasized. You use the floor area. So here is the floor area space. So for example, to those that may not have been there, if you want to see how much of the cost goes to product P, to product P1, you just have to add, first of all the total cost that is under the floor area, the units. These are square meters. Add all of them. When you sum them, then if you want to see how much goes to department P, you say 2,000, which is the units that are on or the floor area space that is occupied by department P1, divided by the total that you are going to find. Okay, the total that you're going to find when you add these, whatever you find multiplied by this cost that you are allocating, it is 5,000. Okay, so that's exactly when you solve this will give you how much of this 5,000 here, which is rent, is going to product P1 or to department P1. Similarly, when you want to do for department P2, you just say 2,500 in this case, divided by the total, X for the total, okay? Multiplied by the amount that you are allocating, you are apportioning 5,000 times 5,000. It will give you specifically how much should go to P2. Do the same for P3. You use 3,000 divided by the total of the total area space times the amount that you are allocating. So it is just that easy. The message is not about allocation. I'm not teaching apportionment today. What I'm commenting on is the basis of apportionment. I think that's all. That's just the message. Depreciation of machinery. What do you think could be the the most appropriate basis of apportionment?
Value of machines.
Okay, thank you. So we can use the value of machinery, right? We can use the value of machines. So you total up all these. So if you want how much goes to P1, you get 60,000 divided by the total of all these. Let's call the total X. Then times how much you are allocating is 10,000 times 10,000. That exactly will give you what goes to P1. And you do the same for P2. You say 80,000 divided by X for the total of the the machinery value times the 10,000 that you are allocating, and that is specifically will give you for productivity P2. You do the same for P3, and that's what you do. Okay. Let's go to lighting. Let's go to lighting. Here we are lighting. Okay. What do we do? How do we apportion lighting?
Number of lights. Number of
Yes,
light points.
Yeah, you can use the number of light points, isn't it? So the way of doing it, colleagues have already said, is still the same. Sum everything for that will be your denominator. Then if you want for P1, you say 10, because 10 is on P1, over that total that you find times the 600 that you're allocating. Do the same for P2, you say 15 over that total number times 600. Do the same for P3, for S1, and for service 2. Specifically, that's what you just do. You don't suffer. For power, how are we going to allocate power? This is very important. If you understand this better, even your assignment, that question, it should be question 1. It is very easy. You understand that it's very easy. Like, there's no need of panicking. I think you can even manage by the end of this week. You should be able to start it, because you'd have known how to apportion and how to reapportion. Then you can pick it up from there. The power, what we use for power?
HP of machines.
Yeah, so we can use the HP of the machines, the hardware power of machines. How does that work? Obviously, it's still in the same way. We have already explained this. For canteen, what do we use to allocate the canteen, overheads? Sorry?
Number of workers, number of employees.
Yes, so we can use the number of employees for canteen. I think this cannot be overemphasized. Then now you have got the others. These are sundry, the sundry costs. What do you think we can use to allocate the sundry expenses?
I think production hours worked.
The production hours worked for the sundry expenses. Sundry expenses, very interesting. What do you understand by, sundry expenses? Sundry is
Let me ask Uncle Google.
Okay. You are asking Uncle Google to tell you what? To tell you what sundry expenses are. Exactly. Or what sundry mean.
Yes.
What does it mean? The phone is still loading and loading again and again.
Okay, it's items which are not important.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, those are sundries.
So the items that are not very important. So what could you use that to, what could you use to do what? As the basis of apportionment?
Yeah, they can fall under production hours worked.
Production hours worked?
Or maybe indirect wages.
For the indirect wages, we don't use the indirect wages, we use the direct wages. We have the direct wages. Yeah. Anyway, at least the message has been gotten. The most important thing is that you have gotten the basis of apportionments. That's what we wanted you to get.